So I want to share a little bit about what the experience of microdosing psilocybin mushrooms has been like for me personally. I have been microdosing for over 3 years, and lately I've been doing a little bit of reflecting on what the impact has been of that practice in my life over the past couple of years, and I've got quite a bit to share. So get ready for my 4 ways that microdosing mushrooms has transformed my life. So first, before I dive into the 4 reasons, I want to just share a little bit about my practice. I microdose anywhere from 10 milligrams to 200 milligrams, and that's a pretty big range, but with microdosing, more is not always better. And in fact, I've discovered over the last few years that going down to less and taking almost a microdose of a microdose is actually really impactful for me. With microdosing, you're not looking to get knocked over the head. You are not under the influence with microdosing. You're making a subtle shift in the way the regions of your brain are connecting. The effects are meant to be minimal. Now, for some people who are used to using psychedelic substances or psychoactive substances like cannabis, this almost seems like a ripoff. Like, right? Aren't we supposed to alter our reality? You can totally alter your reality all that you want. And in fact, you can have all sorts of life-changing and brain-shifting experiences doing that. I'm really talking about being able to go about your real everyday life with just a slight shift in how you see things. I'm going to share how those slight shifts over the last 3 years have really added up to big results for me. A little bit about me before I started microdosing. I thought I was awake. I thought I was aware, and in many ways I was. I was a trained coach. I practiced mindfulness as much as I could. I supported other people in getting clear on what they wanted and going for it in their lives. I was, at the time, navigating a chronic illness and experiencing more and more physical symptoms on a daily basis that were really starting to mess with me on a mental health level. And now, when you're talking about physical inflammation and pain, your brain is also inflamed. I think that's an important thing to remember. Your body and your mind are totally connected. They are not separate. So as I was struggling with these physical symptoms and issues of this chronic inflammatory situation, this growing set of allergic response to food and my environment and everything, I was in a state of hypervigilance in my head. It was difficult to calm down. It was difficult to rest. It was difficult to just let go of anything for a hot minute and see what was awesome about my life. I was in constant negative panic mode. I can only see what wasn't working. I could only see how much money I wasn't making. I could only see how my children were getting sicker. I could only see how things were getting worse for me. I started to experience depression for the first time in my life. It was honestly like the world was happening in black and white. It was just really hard for me to see color. And so a friend shared some powdered psilocybin mushrooms in a spice jar and just instructed me to take a little bit of it, maybe like a 1/16 of a teaspoon, right? There was no measuring happening at this point. And in fact, I couldn't even find a lot online about how to microdose 3.5 years ago, which is why I'm really passionate about sharing what I have learned over the last 3 years. I won't say that I don't have days where I don't experience depression and anxiety and hypervigilance, like that state that I was in 3.5 years ago, but they are fewer and far between, and they're isolated to moments and chunks of time as opposed to just all the time. So that's number 1. I went from a depressed state into a more than okay state. And I'm not where I would like to be in terms of wellness and happiness and contentment, but I am well on my way, and I seriously credit microdosing for that. Number 2, I started being able to really see my blind spots. The things that I wasn't looking at and wasn't willing to look at. And like I said, I thought I was awake. And we all do this. We all have blind spots. We all have ways that our ego prevents us from facing the things that are painful. And when I started microdosing, it was like suddenly I was able to acknowledge and see like things that I was doing, ways that I was showing up in my life, lies that I was telling myself about myself and my existence in order to keep me safe and small. And I can't say that the experience of microdosing has just been all rainbows and butterflies. It really has also been pretty painful, right? To be able to see a lie that you've been telling yourself or a way that you've been showing up in your life that's totally out of integrity with who you are and who you want to be. There's some grieving that comes with that and has come with that for me. So microdosing days are not always sparkly. Really, this ability to see what I've avoided has made it really clear what I want. I was really able to see, oh, this is what's important to me, not stuff, experiences. Microdosing makes it easier for me to be in action. It sort of addresses that indecisiveness because I am clearer on what I don't want and what I do want. And so being in the active weekly, monthly practice of microdosing has made it easier to be in action. There's nothing worse than indecisiveness, and I still experience it for sure, but being intentional about microdosing and being more intentional in my life every single day has made it easier to move forward and make decisions. Number 3, presence, being mindful, paying attention to the right now, experiencing my life just as it is in this awesome moment is so much easier when microdosing. There's really, if you've experienced any type of psychedelics, I would say one of the most profound benefits that most people report is this feeling of presence. There's nowhere else you can be when you are in a psychedelic experience except right here. And that's on the macro level. I experience that on the micro level with the microdosing. So on a dose day, which for me is every 3rd day, dropping in, taking a breath, slowing down, feeling my feet on the floor, dropping into 10, 15, maybe even 20 minutes of meditation is infinitely more accessible. I don't feel a fight to get to that place of presence, to try and clear my head, to calm my nervous system down. It's like the microdose just drops me into that state. And no, not like taking a Valium and all of a sudden like, whew, I'm relaxed. The medicine doesn't quite work that way. That's a little bit more subtle and you have to meet it. So on a microdosing day, I make sure to really drop into meditation. It's also a great day to practice yoga, to move my body, to be out in nature, to be barefoot on the grass. All of those practices really support that presence, that alignment, and that feeling of oneness and connectedness that I think so many of us are seeking, that microdosing can give us a glimpse of. And so I can experience that, and the more time that's gone on with microdosing, I can experience that on non-microdosing days as well, right? It's like once you see and experience what that feels like, oh, it's infinitely more accessible to then do that, step into that, drop into that. My hypervigilance is down. That trauma response, that part of so many of us that wants to do and figure out and control in order to feel safe, that response is significantly improved. And yes, I have leaned more into mindfulness meditation. I have leaned into breath work. I have leaned into receiving healing on so many different levels and in so many ways in order to access that. But microdosing was like the doorway into experiencing what it feels like to feel safe in my body so that I had the wherewithal to lean into these other practices. It's really hard to drop into mindfulness when you're in a complete trauma state, right? Microdosing has allowed me to experience my body and my mind from a calmer state and to really know, truly know on a deeper level that I'm safe. This is why it's so effective for people suffering from PTSD. Number 4, microdosing has helped me to let go. It's helped me to let go. It's helped me to let go of things that don't serve me, people that no longer serve me, experiences I no longer wish to have, and old stories, things that I'm holding on to energetically and emotionally that just aren't mine anymore and need to go. So the thing that I really love about psychedelic therapy is that psychedelics reveal a lot to us. That's the part I was talking about earlier, about being able to see what it was, the blind spots that I had. Once those things are revealed, it's like, oh, I have a choice. I can let this go, this thing that I'm seeing that doesn't work for me. There's a releasing and a purging that happens with a lot of psychedelics. In a journey, in a trip that might look like laughing, crying, yawning, vomiting. All of those things are your body's way of releasing stored energy, trauma, emotions, whatever you want to call it. And on the micro level with microdosing, I've experienced that releasing. A microdosing day is sometimes like a teary day for me. And this isn't the case for everyone, but there's a release that can happen for me emotionally on a microdosing day when I can sit and feel the truth of something and then let it go. I released 2,000 square feet of stuff, furniture, clothes, mementos, papers. I don't even remember all of it because I've released it. I was able to see that I was living in black mold, something I was in complete denial about, but knew somewhere in the recesses of my mind by microdosing. And I was able to process that I could no longer live in this home. And I was able to let go and release all of the things in the home that were making me sick. Now, there are people who also have to leave black mold and refuse to let go of the stuff, and they keep themselves sick. There's so much fear attached to letting go, to having nothing, literally, to putting everything for a family of 4 in 2 cars and driving away. That was a massive, massive release for me, and I would not have been able to do it without psilocybin therapy, without microdosing regularly through that highly emotional experience. Microdosing has allowed me to release pain and hurt that I've held onto. It's allowed me to really deeply forgive people from my past that I just allowed myself to ruminate on the stories around. I'm sure you can relate. Every time that person or that memory would come up, it was like I would be re-triggered around the pain or the betrayal or the hurt or the unfairness of what happened with them, not just their part in it, but mine as well. Microdosing really allowed me to lean into a practice of self-forgiveness. I use the Ho'oponopono Hawaiian forgiveness prayer. Please forgive me. I'm sorry. Thank you. I love you over and over again, to let go of those stories on loop, because my gosh, that's just as bad as 2,000 square feet of clutter and mold and dust, isn't it? That's the stuff in my head that I was done with and that I've released and continue to release in the process of microdosing. Microdosing allowed me to let go of stories that I was holding on to about current relationships I was in, labels that I had put on people. It's allowed me to really improve my relationship with my mom, which was a really messy and unhealthy relationship in many ways, because I was very attached to this pain that I had, or this way that she was that I decided wouldn't work for me. Unless she changed, I couldn't change. All of that clutter, I let it go. I brought my intention to the microdose specifically around that relationship, and I watched it heal over a period of about 6 months. So microdosing supported the release and the let go. So to summarize, microdosing helped my life go from black and white to color. Microdosing allowed me to see my blind spots and what I wasn't willing to see. Microdosing allows me to drop in and have an easier time accessing the present moment and all of the awesome that's in the present moment. Microdosing helps me let go. If you want to know more about how to microdose, specifically how I microdose, how I make it a reality in my life day in and day out, you can access my free microdosing mini course at my website, ryannabatiste.com. All the links and information for that will be with this video or podcast. Please go ahead and subscribe to my podcast or my YouTube channel after listening to this video. And if you want to hear more about how microdosing has supported me and exactly how it could support you, I would love to be your coach. I wish you the best on your journey to heal. Thanks so much for watching and listening.